is Ghana, a thriving nation on the West African coast. How can we become real estate investors? Okay, on our panel today, we have Dale Bryant, MBA, Michael Chijioke, JD. We have Joseph Napoleon and Gerald Karikari. Okay, so recently a lot of African Americans have been looking at places to possibly retire that are other than the United States. And Ghana has become an area that people are looking into. So we're going to have a panel that discusses the pros and cons of actually owning and buying and owning real estate in Ghana. I'm going to start off with Dale Bryant, who will introduce himself and tell us about his opportunities and what he's done in Ghana recently.
Thank you. My name is Dale. Recently relocated to Ghana. My background is finance, ex-Lehman, ex-Morgan. In 21, my wife wanted to consider moving somewhere else outside of the U.S. We checked out Ghana. We loved it. We stayed. And so in Ghana, it's not even 70 years old. And so it's new, emerging, developing. And so the way you make money in Ghana right now is dirt, concrete, either mining, agriculture, or real estate. And I have Airbnbs. I have about 30 beds. We host large groups. I have an agricultural product, a yam farm on 10 acres. But I spend most of my time on a retirement community village, 20 plus acres, rental units, where I hope to serve a niche of incoming Black American expats who are frustrated with the lack of housing options currently. And so that's where I spend most of my my time and bandwidth on. Some of the challenges of investing in Africa are things that we take for granted here: contracts, title, things like that. Real estate markets are not as developed. There's a lot of cultural and traditional practices that are still in play that slow the process down. Land is a big issue. It accounts for 85% of the problems of any deal that you're going to work on. And so there are cultural challenges, but with challenges come opportunities. And the opportunity that I saw is that because of cultural differences and gaps, for example, in Ghana, there's no senior living community concept because when you buy a house in Ghana, you don't sell the house in Ghana. It's a family house. So there's no robust aftermarket activity. And you don't necessarily kick grandma and grandpa out. You live with them. Everyone lives together. So when you have older expats coming in who are senior and need accommodations to speak to their health conditions, their mobility, etc., there's no housing stock because Ghanaians never had to serve that market. So that's where, on one hand, there are challenges, but on the other hand, there are opportunities. And so that's my experience. I'm actually, in New York raising capital. It's a $6 million project that I'm raising through a Regulation CF program. And so my investors are in two buckets. One camp is just looking for return. My project is going to yield somewhere between 12 and 20+% returns, depending on where you come in on the investment spectrum. And then the other bucket of investors are people who appreciate some of the economic activity we trigger in the neighborhoods and the villages that will do the projects. And so there's profits plus purpose. And so I have brochures in the back for anyone. Take 3 brochures, 1 for yourself, 2 for friends, and come join our family of investors as we embark on building retirement throughout West Africa.
You didn't really say what the name of your project is, and just give people a sense of when you say investing. Can you just give everybody an understanding? Okay, you said there was different tiers of ways to get in. Just kind of explain that a little bit more.
So all of my projects in Ghana will be butterfly associated, which butterflies signify transformation and change. So this project is called Monarch Village. Monarch butterflies are the longest living butterflies, and they travel the furthest. And so it's appropriate. In terms of the investor base, we just closed the revenue share where I raised a little bit over 100,000 just to get things set up in Ghana. And now we're currently in an equity raise. So $6 million will be for equity investors. And then the next tranches, the next 3 will be preferred shares for the professional money that needs the project to be a little more de-risked before they come on board. And so those upcoming tranches will offer less and less yield as the project gets closer and closer to completion and is de-risked.
So if I want to get involved and I give you, how much would I need to give you? And does that secure a space in your retirement village? Let's say I wanted to think about moving over to Ghana to actually retire. Or is there another way that I'd need to get involved with actually having that situation where I can actually leave the United States and retire in Africa?
So in this equity raise, we're taking $10,000 minimum blocks of investment at a time. We have people that invest more, 25, 50,000, but 10,000 minimum. To your question of what does it allow for investors who also want to become residents, we have perks at different levels of investment where if you are coming at 50,000 or higher increments, that will allow you to have discounts on your rental for X amount of years. So yes, you can be, we have 2 investors who plan on being renters. So yes, there's a program for that.
Okay, so we have other folks on the panel who actually are looking at purchasing land and doing development in Ghana. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Joseph Napoleon so he can tell us a little bit about what he has done in terms of looking for properties in Ghana and some of the challenges that he's had.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Matthew. My name is Joseph Napoleon from J&J Management. I've been in construction for over 15 years, and I've transitioned into being a developer, and I'm happy to be on this panel. Yeah, so before COVID, I was involved with a group, and our goal was to buy 200 acres of farm property in the Upper Volta region, actually 100 in the Upper Volta region. And because of COVID, some of my partners actually engaged, they purchased their property. I didn't initiate that because when I was supposed to go over myself, COVID came in. The project is still online, and I have every intention to follow up on our initial venture. One of the interesting things that I learned while I was there and while we were kind of sorting for everything was that when you purchase property in Ghana, correct me if I'm wrong, you get a 50-year lease. That's so? Correct? Yes. As a foreigner, you get a 50-year lease. Yes. And after your 50-year lease, you have to renegotiate your lease to go on board. So that's one of the things you'd have to consider if you invest in Ghana as well. In addition to that, if you're getting land from the tribe, it's an entirely different ballgame. Because you purchase land from a tribal leader, you restricted to, if, for example, you have a grievance, it can be resolved with the state. Tribal law is actually higher than state law. So you kind of limited to, I mean, if for whatever reason you have an issue with tribal leader, you can say, well, okay, I'm taking the land back then. You have to figure that out, So, these things you kind of have to navigate through. It's not something that happens. I mean, it would be an extreme situation where that actually happens, but, generally it would just be things you'd have to consider. When you purchase land from a tribal leader, it's called stool land. Yeah. And, so it was kind of interesting just getting involved in things from that standpoint, having to deal with a tribal leader, having to deal with a state, and then, then you have attorneys, have to figure things out. So then you decide generally, okay, well, whether you want to go, for example, in the case of, like Accra, where it's a major city, obviously, then property value is going to be, a bit higher. So that's why myself, based on what we are engaged in, something, farming in particular, we decided to go out, miles and miles away, which would, we get property much, much, much cheaper. Another thing you'd have to consider is where you're getting your water from, right? So that's very important. So before you purchase a piece of property, with any intention, you want to know how you're going to get water to that property, whether you could do it by a well, or whether you're going to be, pumped in, whatever the situation might be. But these were some of the, if you want to call it pitfalls, the things you may have to consider if you're interested in investing in Ghana. And I mean, I definitely recommend it because as was mentioned earlier, individuals are talking about they missed out on Harlem, right? And you have places like Ghana and it's growing at a steady pace. And these are opportunities for investing in real estate as far as I'm concerned.
So are you still considering going over, and what is your approach going to be this time around in terms of actually working on getting a deal of some sort?
As I mentioned earlier, some of my partners have already purchased property. So the idea is a couple of us would purchase property adjacent to theirs. So we both have that expansion, and it would make farming more feasible. The more property you have, obviously, you purchase equipment, you're able to deliver more yield as a result. You spend a certain amount of money on equipment, you want to make sure you have a certain amount of land to go along with it. You don't want to buy, spend $50,000 on a piece of equipment and you only have 10 acres of land. So the idea is to be able to get as much land in the same region as possible. And as far as your question, most definitely I have every intention. I just haven't had the opportunity to go back as yet because I have to spend at least 2 weeks to get done what I need to. But definitely I'm on board with the team and moving forward with what we initiated before COVID.
One last thing. Are all your partners foreigners, or do you have partners who are actually Ghanaian citizens?
Yes, we're working with 2 Ghanaian citizens, and everyone else are actually foreigners from here, from the U.S.
What's the benefit of having?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, when you purchasing property, I mean, for example, there's a 99-year lease when you're doing it from, if you're Ghanaian versus if you're a foreigner, you have a 50-year lease that you have to renegotiate after 50 years. If you also purchase the property, for example, from someone else, and that person has had the property, if it's a foreigner, maybe 40 years, which means you have 10 years on your lease. So that's a consideration you have to think about as well before purchasing that property, that now I have to renegotiate for that property after 10 years. Yeah.
So now we're going to go to some of the legal issues of when you actually do get the property, because it's not just about going over there and buying land. The rules are totally different. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Gerald. He's going to go through some of the key things that you need to know once you get the property to make sure that you can keep the property.
Good evening. My name is Gerald Karikari. I am an attorney practicing in Ghana, the United States. What I do here is primarily immigration and EB-5 work is something that I've done quite a bit of, which is really interesting in relationship to people who are interested in going to Ghana, because we are, or should I say, the Association of Ghanaian Lawyers in America are working with the the Ghana Bar Association, in terms of a potential program for investment-related visas that many other countries are, if you're not aware of, have. Starting with, I guess, the Caribbean, you'll find that you can purchase property at a certain value or price point and be given lawful permanent residence. And so that property is there. But in general, you should know that Caribbean, most every country in the Caribbean with a passport, you don't need a visa to come to Ghana. So you, Jamaican, Barbados, whatever the passport you have, you can come, just show your passport, and that's the visa will be issued to you. And obviously, DNA test and the rest will help you, because we have a vibrant dual citizenship program. So when you come there and you can show that this is really where you started out, you just found yourself in the Caribbean or America, then I think the government is very responsive to bringing you back home, so you can feel like you've made the 360 and come back to where you started from. Ghana is an exciting place. Obviously, people like Isaac Hayes and Rita Marley and even Will and Jada had purchased properties years and years ago, 15, 20 years ago, before we started the year of return. I think people must have heard of that 2019 was the 400th anniversary of the first slave ships to leave our coast. And Michelle Obama came back, and she was pleased to be able to come back home and feel that sense of belonging. And so it is that drives the Ghanaian people to be welcoming to foreign investment. And so when you think about it, there's tons of both diaspora as well as resident developers who are doing all types of products on the market, from, gated communities that you can go and your house is already built, done, ready to go, driveway, they give you the keys. There are projects, which is apartment buildings, and you can buy condos really to purchase. And then there is ground up construction that's there. And that's where you would hear about who are you purchasing from and where you have to have support. So in all of them, I would say due diligence is very important. And that means a good realtor, a good lawyer. The Ghana Bar Association, Association of Ghanaian Lawyers in America are two places where you can find referrals for Ghanaian attorneys to help you with it once you've discovered a place you are interested in purchasing. Financing is limited, very different. Primarily, mortgages require at least 30% down, most 50% down. Most are about 10 years. You won't find too many 20 and 30-year mortgages. And I think that's more reasonable in terms of the price points that we're talking about. So the construction is cinder block. And some people who buy their own land, they buy the machines to create their cinder blocks. So you could actually build your bricks and lay them on your property. And that's something interesting and different, I think, in terms of purchasing land and building your own property in Ghana. Your relationship to getting a survey, getting deeds, the Bureau of Deeds or the lands is an entity that is supposed to be tracking the purchases of homes and showing you what land, who was in possession of the land from before, right? And that's where you have the issue of the chief of the area saying that this land belonged to you or didn't belong to you. So one of the things that's very important is that people don't sit on land, right? If you all know the concept of adverse possession in US law, then you should think about it very strongly in Ghana. So you purchase that property, get your survey, build your fence, put your stuff there, be open and adverse to anyone else's possession. You want to make sure that you do that. Areas of development now are coming up in Cape Coast, right? Which is where the slave castles are. Accra is the capital in the city, and tons of properties are there, but it's very expensive. You have the whole Ghanaian diaspora, German Ghanaians, UK Ghanaians, Canadian Ghanaians, American Ghanaians, before all the other Black people who discovered they're Ghanaian too, right? So that's a really tough market. The other place is Kumasi, right? And so if you know your African history, you know that there's a Twin Cities situation in terms of the capitals, right? The Shanti region and the Shantis are from Kumasi, and that's their capital. And the Khan people are from Accra, and that's their capital. And to British UK colonizers, we're all the same to them. And so they never made any distinction, right? So you kind of get that those people are, I don't know, it'd be Brooklyn and Harlem, I don't know, or West Coast, East Coast, but we're all still the same people generally, right? And so that's kind of the interaction. And so you should go to different areas and get a vibe and a feeling for where you want to be and how much hustle and bustle you're willing to. There are people who say, I've been in the city and I have no intention of being in another packed, crowded place. We're still struggling with traffic patterns and the rest. And while there's still a lot of infrastructure projects going on, if you want, you can be 1 hour outside, 2 hours outside of a city and feel like you're really in farm country, right? Like, I don't know, whatever you think Iowa looks like or feels like is probably 10 times more rural than that. So these are the things that people should consider in terms of all the opportunities that are there. But definitely a good realtor, a good lawyer is your first start. And then obviously the financing, if you're going to pay cash or you're going to go through the banks who have different programs for individuals who are in retirement and can show passive income that they're getting from, let's say, interest on their 401k or dividends that they can use, or the sale of a big house and then downsize in Ghana. All of those factors will play into what kind of terms you get. And I would tell you that the terms are significant, in terms of interest in that 10-year period, right? The principal and interest is going to be more because the period is shorter, and then the interest rates, we're talking closer to 10, 11, right? So that's almost commercial here in America. But nevertheless, if you buy a piece of land at 40 or 50,000 and you put another 70 into it, you're living in the Taj Mahal, 3,000-4,000 square feet versus, I don't know, nothing in Brooklyn you could get. And so, right, you'd be, well, I was talking about building the house, but you'd probably get in the city, you couldn't get nowhere near that. Outskirts, you probably could get 1 or 2 acres just to start.
Okay. So before we move off of what you're telling us, can you go through any particular paperwork that you need to deal with once you actually make a purchase to secure the property? And if you can answer this question, some people might want to purchase in Ghana and then leave it to family members who aren't in the country. Maybe someone back in America, they want to, say, hey, I'm going to buy this for my child or something. Is that possible, or what should they think of when they're dealing with that sort of situation?
Yes, it's definitely possible. We don't have any. There's other countries where they have restrictions for foreigners purchasing property. In Ghana, we don't have those huge obstacles to be concerned about. You have to obviously deal with estates and wills in Ghana, which is a whole nother animal, but is worth making sure you dot your I's and cross your T's as it relates to trying to leave the property, because there are transfer taxes in the village and those issues that have to come up in that transfer process. But certainly it is all possible, and it happens all the time.
You can't leave tribal land to anybody, right?
Well, we as Akan people, Ashanti people, I'm not sure I know of an African group that actually believes in the fee simple, right? In Europe, they believe this belongs to me, give it to me, and they walk off with it, you know what I mean? Versus Africans that I know start from the proposition that God gave it to us, and we're only stewards of it, we're trustees of it. So this concept of people taking something and saying it's mine forever isn't really, nobody kind of can grasp that, right? Same thing that Christopher Columbus got over on the Indians, right? They didn't understand that he thought he was buying Manhattan for some beads and some drinks. But so the idea is that your lease is something that's transferable. So you have a lease, just like you, rent a store, you have a lease, you sell your property, you sell it with the lease, and the years or the time you have left on the lease. So all of those still apply. But this idea of a fee simple, it's mine forever, nobody can touch it. No. We're not going to do that. Thank God.
Good to know. Okay, so we're going to have our last panelist talk about buying properties, not just in Ghana, but in some other interesting places that he has visited. And he has some information that he'd like to share in terms of people looking in other spots, other spots in Africa, other than Ghana.
Thank you. So Michael Chijioke, Preside Partners, and thank you for having me here today. So, I think everybody's covered most of the basic principles. So I'm just going to jump off those principles and, add some spice to it, right? So you have to have somebody wherever you're purchasing. You have to have someone. That someone can be an entity. That might be a reputable real estate management company, preferably someone that has a relationship, let's say, or a bank account in the US, because you always have to consider rule of law. Now, the reason why properties can be transferred well, generally in the West, is because you can pull out a stick and you can get Derek over here to go attack them, right? And that's not good for their business. In other countries where you have, let's say, you're a foreigner coming in, you're trying to build or create your dream home, well, people see you as a foreigner. And even myself, my background is Nigerian ancestry, Igbo as well. And there is a thought, just as was represented, this is my family's land. This will never be your land. So when someone wants to sell their land and it's part of the family, if you don't pay attention to those specific areas, they get reclaimed because it was never your land anyway, right? So you have to think about these type of things when you're putting your buildings together, when you're putting your whatever rentals that you're doing or anything like that. You have to have relationships on the ground, and preferably relationships with management companies that are looking to expand, and they're not just a fly-by-night type of company. So you really have to have that. And, I would say also the external pressures, right? Just as was mentioned, the generations of Africans who left, first generations who left, had children, and now they're bringing Forex, they're bringing capital back to these lands. This is in the government's incentive to create structures that allow for these types of currencies to come into the market. The reason why, it gives stability to their actual currency. So what they're doing now is they're building out different systems to allow for Western capital to come in and actually build the principle of their reserves. And a lot of these things come through real estate. So there is an incentive from the government to have foreign capital come in. So when you're looking at different countries to go into, when you're looking at different areas to build, think about how the government has now structured a way to take the capital from other areas and build it into their own system. Trust me, over time, they're going to be in your favor. I would also like to say that the growth of the middle class in many places of Africa and any country inside of the continent is something that's occurring and is not being spoken about. So, thanks to digital work and thanks to exposure to other types of systems to figure out how to get money and bring it back and then build from there, you're having the middle class just growing into something that is, I would say, unrecognizable. Maybe it happened, 100 years ago, and then the U.S. This middle class needs something. They need services. And this is a part of why the areas, as was spoken about before, are now growing and their valuations are becoming higher as well. And so these are things to tune yourself into. Where's this capital going? Where are you positioning yourself to where that up ramp is heading? Where can you purchase there? And is it a friendly area to be in? And so on my end, I find different opportunities for developers, for some of my investment partners as well, throughout the continent, and really just leveraging the existing relationships that I have and also the growing relationships that occur because of those. Relationships are like equity, You sow your seed, it builds up, and then they introduce you to other people. And so I have a nice, let's say a finger on the pulse to what's going on in many of these countries. There are examples like Ghana that has been mentioned, like Senegal, like Kenya, like even Rwanda, where money has come in. International investments have recalibrated how they are looked at across the world. And people are now looking to settle in these areas because they know that the population is growing. So this is a fantastic opportunity. I know we're talking about Ghana and I'm a little expanding, but this is a fantastic opportunity that if you do your research, if you position yourself well, you can increase that and start that, I'll say that first foundation for exponential growth for your family and for your legacy.
Okay, so this is a really good opportunity for real estate development, but there's one thing I want all you panelists, I'm gonna give you a chance to all answer. Okay, once you actually put money into these countries, into Ghana or any other countries that you mentioned, can you get your money back out? Okay, because if we're talking about all this exponential growth and all this other stuff, but if you can't enjoy what you're building or you have to leave it there, talk about the pros and cons of that. Let you go first.
So also the answer that the development that you're doing, if for some reason you wanted to leave the country, you're good, right? There's laws in place that will protect your equity, or like you said, you don't show your face in Boston.
No, he was talking about when you buy a piece of land and you don't show up and show activity and show construction or possession, people will encroach. And the laws are such that an illegal encroacher who's been there for many years might have more legal status than you do as the owner. So typically, if you buy a piece of land, you want to show possession, even if it's borders, corners, walls, entrance, and nothing else. You've demonstrated to the neighborhood that it's yours, and you've also given the opportunity for any troublemakers to show up sooner than later, versus buying a piece of land, developing 10 years later, and then having the troublemakers show up. So it's kind of like a peacock. You want to come in, spread your wings, demonstrate possession, and invite potential trouble. But just so that you know, in Ghana, in West Africa, foreign companies have been buying land and building things for 50 years. We are late to the party. So to answer your question, yes, you lease land, buy, lease land, you build your thing, whatever it is, commercial, residential, and you have ownership. And there are laws protecting your ownership. So it's no different than here. But to your question, can you get your money back? Because of the relationship of the dollar to the CD, every day the dollar appreciates against the CD. When I went, it was 8-1. When I went in 21 to look, it was 8-1. When I moved, it was 10-1. Now it's 15-1, on its way to 20-1. It's good for American dollar earning people, very tough for local Ghanaians, but it's good for dollar earning people. So there are obstacles in place that make it a little difficult to get your money out. So taking dividends back out, it's taxed, so on and so forth. Now, I structured my company in a way not to address this obstacle. It just so happens that most of my residents will be Americans with American banks who will be paying their rent to my American bank. So my money will never be in Ghana to try to take out. But I didn't structure it that way on purpose. No. But so it's not impossible to get your money out. Yeah. So that's my answer. So I won't be that affected, but it's not impossible to get your money out.
Right. I was going to say to you that the banks, right, ECOWAS, there's about, I don't know, the big people are still there. Standard Chartered, Barclays, names you've heard before, they're there. And then you have the question of what kind of accounts you have, right? So the Ghana currency is called the CEDI, CEDIF, right? And those CDs are what they're supposed to transact business in. With so many foreigners coming in, people were starting to try to charge in dollars, and the government had to step in to say you can't charge in dollars. But obviously, you in the banks, they ask you if you're going to have a CD account or a dollar account or a euro account. And so that's where they're watching what money you have going in. Also, Americans, we have our own issues, right? That you are taxed all over the world. So you need to know that theoretically, you're not supposed to leave off any money you make in Ghana, right? You're supposed to let them know how much it is, and they're going to give you what they said was a rebate. So whatever Ghana charges you as a tax minus what they would have charged. So let's say that you're 30% tax bracket, but Ghana only charges you 20, they will be there looking for their 10%. So maybe you might want to get a Ghanaian citizenship, and then you don't actually put your American passport in your ID and all your information at the bank. But again, that's if you go into Barclays, all of the international banks that are in Ghana, if that's who you feel like you're going to give your money to, right? I mean, whatever they holding Haitian money from the France or all the other stuff you heard of, you still want to put your money with them. When you get to Ghana, you have to be ready for that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've heard of situations where people have put a sizable amount of money in, let's say in Nigeria, away, and then years later, it's the depreciation is incredible, maybe like 200 something to 1 at this point. So when in the 1980s, it was around 1 to 1, US to Naira. So you can imagine the heartache, right? So just really look into the policy of the governments right now. It's the government's incentive to take the money, the foreign capital, transition it into their own, and then keep the foreign capital as a base for their central bank. That gives them the ability to stop this bleeding of their currency. It's in their incentive right now. This is what they're positioning themselves to do. You can see it from many countries are creating funds to do development work in the country. But the real aim, I think, it's just me, the real aim is to bring foreign capital to stabilize their currency, right? So just do a little bit of investigation on the policies for the country relative to foreign capital and transference into their currency. Then look at the depreciation rate, potentially, very likely, the depreciation rate of their currency, and then make a decision that is responsible.
I appreciate your question, Matthew. As far as I'm concerned, personally, I have not devised an exit strategy as yet. My interest is doing business in Ghana, on the continent, and whatever it is, as long as I'm creating employment, I'm able to get some return that's reasonable, that could satisfy me. But at some point, I guess if I want to take out X amount, I'll figure it out down the line, honestly. Yeah.
Okay, so that's going to end our panel today. I think we've had a very good discussion about what the pros and cons of investing in real estate in Ghana are. And if you need more information, you can reach out to the panelists that we've had. So give us a round of applause.
I just wanted to incentivize you that I do believe you have an opportunity, right? We have emerging markets in America, but you really have emerging markets, right? You know who invented senior citizens homes in America? No, but you need somebody who's starting an industry that really doesn't exist. And so there are so many opportunities for you to be the first. And what it means to be the first in a fertile market is really generational wealth in terms of the opportunity. Your 40 acres and a mule you never got, you might be able to really do something. So I can't encourage you more to do the due diligence and get in where you fit in.
Where would you rank Rwanda among those four countries that
Let me say it like this. So Rwanda, after the genocide, did a repositioning of their entire country. It was even Francophone leaning. And then it started leaning towards more Anglophone ways of doing business as well. And also, I would say the government structure currently is one of, say, called a strongman scenario. And in those types of scenarios, you either goes really well or it doesn't go really well. At this point, so at this point, and I have no comment.
Okay, I like this media.
I have no comment, but I would say this, that Rwanda has shown itself to be very, let's say, efficient and also inviting of international companies and capital as well. Of course, there are many political situations that are occurring right now. So I would rank it high in terms of the interest of capital coming in, because in your country, you can't have individuals become rich if your government doesn't allow you to be so. You can't have a industry grow to its next level if your government doesn't put the correct incentives for you to do so. So for Rwanda, it has allowed itself to be open enough to attract capital, also to attract foreign companies and the like, and then position them in a way where it's beneficial to its society. So I would stress those positives, but I would also like to say there are a lot of political situations that are occurring right now. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, let's take our panel. Thank our YouTube audience. Again, for more information on the Urban Real Estate Fund, please visit urbanrealestatefund.com, urbanrealestatefund.com. Thomas Lopez-Pierre signing off.